Imagine dropping like $2,600 for a luxury marriage retreat, um, only to discover the organization running it is legally registered as a tax-exempt charity.
Yeah, that alone is a huge red flag.
Right. But then you find out they also spell their own name wrong on their official website,
Mm.
and they hand you a contact phone number that is physically impossible to dial.
I mean, it sounds like a bad joke, honestly. But for a forensic specialist, those overlapping anomalies, they aren't a punchline. They're actually the starting point for a major investigation.
Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We have a seriously fascinating stack of sources in front of us today.
We really do. We've got an investigative guide on digital irregularities, an open source intelligence or OSINT dossier, and a raw video transcript from a digital researcher who is actively working a live case.
Right. And our mission for today's deep dive is to synthesize all these materials, to understand exactly how forensic specialists connect the dots. We want to solve a very specific equation, which is how do you definitively prove that an organization's self-reported public narrative just completely contradicts its hidden operational reality?
Well, to investigate an entity effectively, the sources emphasize that we can't just passively read their About Us page and take them at their word.
Yeah, obviously.
Right. We have to adopt what the investigative guide calls the algebraic mindset.
The algebraic mindset. Okay, so treating every single piece of an organization's public footprint as a variable in a mathematical equation.
Exactly that. You take their linguistics, their marketing psychology, their physical addresses, and their financial demands, and you basically weigh them against each other.
Like checking if the math actually adds up.
You're trying to quantify the friction between what they claim to be and what they actually document. You're looking for the exact places where the equation just breaks down.
And the subject of the OSINT dossier we're looking at today is a self-proclaimed charitable organization calling themselves Str8paths. And, well, spoiler alert for you listening, the math on Str8paths breaks down in a highly, highly concerning way.
It really does. It falls apart fast.
The ultimate finding points to a complex organizational paradox known in forensic psychology as a religious-based honey hole.
Which is such a wild concept.
It is. We're talking about a carefully constructed environment where vulnerable people and predatory practices are intentionally brought together under the disarming guise of spiritual aid.
It's a really heavy concept for sure, but the methodology used to uncover it is purely objective. If we apply this algebraic mindset, we don't start by analyzing the emotional or spiritual claims.
Right. That comes later.
Yeah, we always start with the most concrete, measurable variable available. We start with the money.
Because if we're acting as forensic specialists, we need an anchor, right? We weigh the entity's legal tax-exempt claims against the actual commercial demands they place on the consumer.
Exactly. So let's look at the first variable. Str8paths publicly claims the legal status of a 501c3 nonprofit organization.
So to you listening, think about the last charity you donated to or volunteered for. A 501c3 status legally implies a public benefit, a charitable service mission, and most importantly, no underlying profit motive.
Right. It's a charity.
That is the legal variable they have presented to the government and to the public.
But then we flip to the other side of the equation, the actual financial requirements. This tax-exempt charity is heavily marketing and selling what they call a platinum marriage retreat.
Platinum, just the word itself sounds expensive.
Oh, it is. It's a 5-day, 6-night event. And the base cost just to get in the door is $2,600 per couple.
Which is a massive luxury tier barrier to entry. I mean, it completely shatters the expectation of a charitable public service.
100%.
But, okay, let me play devil's advocate for a second. Because running a 5-day retreat is not cheap.
Sure. Yeah.
You have to pay for the venue, the staff, the food. Couldn't that $2,600 just be, I don't know, expensive overhead for a legitimate, albeit very luxurious program?
That is a very normal assumption to make. Honestly, it's what most people would think. But the algebraic mindset requires us to look past the surface level assumption and check the granular documentation.
And what did the researcher find in the fine print?
When they dug into it, the whole overhead defense just vanished entirely. Lodging is included in that fee, but participants are explicitly required to purchase and provide their own course materials and their own groceries for the entire week.
Wait, really? You pay almost $3,000 and they don't even feed you?
Nope, you bring your own food.
Oh, wow. It's like booking an all-inclusive luxury resort, but when you arrive, the front desk just hands you a mop and a grocery list.
That is exactly what it's like. They want the premium revenue without promoting the premium service.
That is wild.
And beyond the sheer audacity of it, mechanically, those variables are just irreconcilable.
Because of the nonprofit status.
Right. A 501c3 designation mandates charitable intent. But demanding a $2,600 base fee, plus forcing the consumer to shoulder the hidden ancillary costs for their own basic sustenance, that demonstrates a high-friction financial model.
Yeah, they're basically operating as a high-end commercial hospitality provider.
Exactly. It is fundamentally at odds with a nonprofit mission.
So, okay, if they are pulling in thousands of dollars a couple while simultaneously dodging taxes through a nonprofit status, that revenue stream has to be protected from scrutiny.
Oh, heavily protected.
Because if I'm running a high-friction operation like that, I need to make sure my tracks are incredibly hard to follow. I'm guessing their operational footprint is just as messy as their finances.
Oh, it is intentionally obscured. In digital forensics, once the financial logic fails, an investigator immediately audits the organization's digital and physical domains.
To see if they are operating in the light or hiding in the shadows.
Precisely.
Which brings us to the digital discrepancies in the dossier. This part is fascinating. So the organization's legal name is Str8path, Straight.
Right, normal spelling.
But if you want to email them or visit their official website, the URL is straightpass.com. Straitpass.
Yeah, totally different spelling.
And the dossier also notes another alias domain floating around, which is straitps.com.
Which represents a massive domain-level fracture.
But again, let me challenge that. Could a misspelled URL just be a sign of terrible web design? I mean, maybe the person who registered the domain was in a rush and simply didn't know how to spell straight.
It happens.
Right. So why jump to the conclusion that a typo is some sinister evasion tactic?
Well, in isolation, a misspelling absolutely could just be incompetence. But forensic investigators don't look at variables in isolation. They look for patterns of volatility.
Patterns, okay.
Yeah, and the researcher's video transcript gives us a real-time look into how you separate a harmless typo from intentional deceit.
The timeline in the video really is something else. The researcher notes that just 48 hours prior to the recording, there were active functioning links on that straightpass.com website.
Right.
And those links comprehensively detailed all the retreat costs, the $2,600 fee, and the bizarre grocery requirements.
But during the active forensic analysis, when the researcher attempts to navigate those exact same pathways on the live site, they just hit a wall of 404 errors.
The links are completely dead.
But
But wait, how do they know the links were even there 48 hours ago? I mean, if they're gone, they're gone.
wow. Well, open source intelligence researchers rely on tools that archive the internet.
Oh, like the Wayback Machine.
Exactly. They use the Wayback Machine. Or they pull up the Google cache, which basically takes automated snapshots of websites at specific times.
Okay, got it.
So by comparing the cached snapshot from Tuesday to the live site on Thursday, the investigator has definitive proof that the pages didn't just break. They were actively deleted by the administrators.
Which completely answers the question about incompetence versus deceit.
It proves intent. Legitimate, stable organizations do not work overtime to secretly scrub their core service links and cost breakdowns without any notice to the consumer.
No, of course not.
In forensics, the sudden reactive disappearance of program requirements during an active investigation, that is viewed as an admission of guilt through action.
Wow.
So when you combine a misspelled domain structure with the active scrubbing of financial data, You are no longer looking at a simple error. You are looking at a deliberate evasion tactic.
They are essentially writing their digital footprint in disappearing ink.
That's a great way to put it.
And, if the digital map is that unreliable, the investigator has to look at the physical map. Because a legitimate charity, especially one charging premium luxury fees, should have a centralized, verifiable operational hub. You should be able to physically find their front door.
But the geographic audit reveals the exact same pattern of evasion, just manifested in the physical world.
Right.
Rather than a centralized hub, Str8path operates what the dossier refers to as a fragmented geographic triangle.
The addresses are just incredibly disjointed. Their primary mailing address is listed as P.O. Box 172 in Ronks, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But then their physical office address is listed miles away at 2620, and in some older documentation, 2820 Old Pike in Birdenhand, Pennsylvania.
Right, and both Ronks and Birdenhand are highly insular, rural communities.
Yeah, if you know that specific area of Pennsylvania, it is heavily agricultural, Amish country, actually. It's not exactly a bustling commercial district where you'd expect to find a luxury retreat headquarters.
Exactly. So by spreading their operational details across multiple rural P.O. boxes and shifting physical locations, they create an intentional pattern of obscurity.
Making it hard to track them down.
Right. If an unhappy customer or an auditor wants to physically verify their operations, they are basically sent on a wild goose chase across rural farm country.
And the most bizarre detail in this entire physical audit has to be the telecommunications contact. I mean, the phone number they give you to call for this $2,600 platinum marriage retreat is 717-584-0000.
Just an 8-digit phone number.
It is physically impossible to dial. You cannot connect a call to an 8-digit number in the United States.
I mean, you can't.
So whether it's an unbelievable typo or a deliberate dead end, publishing a broken phone number for a multi-thousand-dollar service just screams a total lack of transparency.
It really does. And the sheer amount of friction here forces a pivotal question. Like, if the financial math is completely broken and their digital footprint is actively being scrubbed behind misspelled domains.
And their physical footprint is a fragmented maze of rural P.O. boxes and impossible phone numbers.
Exactly. How do they convince a single person to actually hand over $2,600?
They must be using some incredible psychological leverage to make people ignore all those blazing red flags.
Yeah, and that connects us to the final and honestly perhaps most insidious variable in our algebraic equation, the linguistic trap.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, when the operational reality is this murky, the marketing language has to do the heavy lifting to mask the predatory commercial transaction.
Right, let's look at the exact words they use. The raw marketing copy, retrieved from their scrubbed website, promises to target, and I'm quoting directly from the dossier here, extremely deep things in your own heart that have restricted your connection with God and your partner. They also promise to provide participants with the tools to break reoccurring cycles in our marriage.
When a forensic linguist analyzes that text, they don't see a welcoming, charitable invitation. They see a highly calibrated, high-pressure psychological framing mechanism.
It's a linguistic sleight of hand. Think about the emotional weight of a phrase like restricted your connection with God.
Massive.
They are intentionally distracting the consumer with the profound, overwhelming concept of spiritual salvation so that the consumer doesn't notice the mechanics of the transaction.
Yes. This is the core mechanism of the honey hole concept the investigator hypothesized.
Right, you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, a honey hole, in hunting terms, is a location that naturally draws targets in.
Oh, why?
By utilizing intensely loaded, spiritually threatening phrases, the organization effectively bypasses the consumer's logical defenses.
Because, I mean, who is going to stop and argue about the bizarre requirement to bring your own groceries when you're being told your literal soul and your marriage are on the line?
Exactly. The $2,600 cost suddenly feels secondary, almost irrelevant, compared to the promise of deep spiritual and relational healing.
Manipulative.
Highly. But the OSINT dossier points out the true underlying danger of this specific linguistic trap. It hinges on that phrase, breaking reoccurring cycles.
Right. The researcher notes that there are entirely valid, healthy reasons why some marriages potentially should be broken up, especially in cases of abuse or deep toxicity.
Absolutely. But this organization's marketing heavily focuses on breaking cycles specifically to stay in the marriage, regardless of the underlying dynamics.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this high-pressure framing contradicts the premise of genuine objective healing. Instead, it is designed to maintain the environment.
It's designed to keep you tethered to them. You go in looking for a lifeline, and they basically sell you an anchor.
That's beautifully put. It traps vulnerable individuals in this religious-based honey hole. The investigator's thesis is that this environment keeps victims and predators mixed together, isolated from outside logic, all under the guise of ongoing spiritual management.
Which brings the entire equation into focus. By rigorously cross-referencing the money, the digital behavior, the physical geography, and the linguistic psychology, the investigator just completely strips away the benevolent mask.
Let's review the investigator's master ledger because we have successfully populated it with three distinct inconsistency patterns.
Okay, what's the first?
First, the financial paradox. The high-tier platinum pricing and hidden grocery costs that completely contradict their 501c3 tax-exempt status.
Right. And second, the digital evasion. The misspelled Str8path.com domains, coupled with the reactive scrubbing of active links to hide their costs.
And third, the physical disjointedness. The fragmented rural addresses between Ronks and Bird in Hand, capped off with an invalid 8-digit phone number.
Right.
We have definitively proven that the public narrative does not match the operational reality.
But the dossier notes that the investigation doesn't stop here, which is crazy to me. The master ledger outlines next steps, which is phase 2.
Yes.
The administrators are actively killing the front-end links. So if the visual website is suddenly just a blank wall of 404 errors, where does a digital researcher even go next?
They bypass the visual interface entirely. The next operational phase is direct source code extraction.
Okay, you have to explain how that works, because when you delete a web page, most people assume the data is just gone forever. What is the investigator actually looking for in the code?
They are looking for the structural residue of the site. Even when an administrator deletes the visible text of a web page, the underlying code often retains the forensic footprints of the alteration.
Like digital fingerprints.
Exactly. The investigator is pulling the raw HTML to look for hidden tags or developer comments where prices might have just been commented out rather than fully erased.
Oh, so the text is technically still there in the code, just hidden from the browser.
Yes. Or they look for timestamps in the metadata that prove exactly when the panic deletion occurred. They might even find orphaned image directories that still host the promotional flyers for the $2,600 retreat.
So deleting the front page doesn't delete the filing cabinet in the back room.
That's a perfect analogy. The internet is highly resilient, and attempts to hastily mask operational costs usually leave a very clear, very readable digital trail, if you know how to extract the source code.
Wow. So to bring this back to you listening right now,
Yeah.
you probably aren't spending your weekend running direct source code extractions on obscure rural nonprofits or cross-referencing P.O. boxes in agricultural Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very niche skill set.
It is. But you absolutely can and should use this algebraic mindset in your daily life. It is about deciding not to be a passive consumer of information.
Absolutely.
Think about the entities you interact with, whether you are researching a new charity to support, looking at a startup, analyzing a political action committee, or even just evaluating a lifestyle influencer who is aggressively selling some masterclass on Instagram.
The mindset is universal. It requires rigorously checking if an entity's self-reported narrative matches the cold, hard data of their actions.
Right.
Like, does their legal status match their pricing model? Does their physical footprint align with their digital claims? Are they providing transparent contact information, or are they making it incredibly difficult to find them?
You don't need to be a digital forensics expert to notice when the math just doesn't add up. You just have to be willing to look past the shiny marketing copy, ignore the emotional linguistic traps, and check the variables for yourself. Does the money make sense? Does the geography make sense?
And, as we close the ledger on the digital footprint of Str8paths, there is one final, broader piece of this puzzle to consider.
That's so.
If an organization is willing to actively weaponize someone's deepest spiritual vulnerabilities and marital struggles just to sell a luxury retreat,
Which they clearly are.
right, it makes you wonder how much of the everyday marketing language we casually consume online, in our inboxes, and on our feeds is actually perfectly engineered to bypass our own logical defenses.
A question definitely worth taking the time to answer.
Imagine dropping nearly $3,000 on this really exclusive luxury retreat, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And then you finally read the fine print on your confirmation receipt and you realize, wait a minute, I have to bring my own groceries.
Oh, man. And your own course materials, too. It's wild.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like you're paying all this money and you have to supply everything yourself. So today, we aren't just looking at, a terrible deal. We are exploring how investigators actually expose the digital lies behind so-called nonprofit organizations.
Yeah, we really are.
So welcome to this deep dive where our mission is to basically train your eye to see the friction, the friction between the polished narrative an organization presents to you and the stark reality that their underlying data actually proves.
Right, because we are dissecting the methodology of open source intelligence, or OSINT, as it's known in the field. And we have a really robust stack of sources on the table to guide us today.
We really do. It's quite the stack.
Yeah. We're pulling from this forensic investigative guide to digital and organizational irregularities, along with the super detailed OSINT dossier presentation.
Right.
But most notably, we have this fascinating YouTube video dated June 6, 2026.
Ah, yes, the Eric Stewart video.
Exactly. He's an active investigator, and he's basically documenting his real-time analysis of a live target. It's so cool because he doesn't just, tell you what he found. He actually shows you the underlying mechanics of the investigation while he does it.
Which is so helpful. And I mean, the core philosophy connecting all these sources is something that the investigative guide calls an algebraic mindset.
I love that term.
Right. It's all about just stripping the emotion and, the shiny marketing out of the equation entirely.
Yeah.
You are looking purely at the variables.
Oh, yeah, the cold, hard variables.
Exactly. Like legal status, pricing models, the digital footprint, physical addresses, and you're calculating whether or not those variables actually balance out.
And when they don't balance, that's when you found what the guide terms an illogical irregularity.
An illogical irregularity, which sounds fancy, but...
Well, I mean, it is basically the bread and butter of forensic work.
Right.
A minor clerical discrepancy or like a misspelled domain or even just a fractured address. To a casual observer, that might just seem like random internet noise, right?
It's just a typo.
Yeah. Exactly. But to a specialist, those are the entry points. They're the loose threads you pull to unravel a massive organizational deceit.
Okay, let's unpack this because to really grasp how to spot these irregularities, we need to look at the very first structural failure investigators search for.
Right, the big red flag.
Yeah. According to the forensic guide, the ultimate red flag waves when the math fundamentally fractures between an organization's legal status and its actual pricing structure.
Yes. The math just doesn't add up.
And our sources provide this highly specific active case study to demonstrate this. So, we are looking at a group operating under the name Str8paths.
Though the dossier notes they also utilize aliases, right? Like Str8paths.
Yeah, Str8paths, exactly. And on paper, their self-identified public narrative claims they are a 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit.
Right.
They say they're on this charitable spiritual mission.
But a 501c3 designation carries a very specific structural mandate. I mean, it inherently implies a public benefit,
Yeah.
and an absence of profit motive. That is the legal variable they have literally chosen to define their entire organization.
Which is a huge claim to make.
It is. But when the investigator in the video starts auditing their actual financial demands, that variable clashes violently with reality.
Oh, completely.
He uncovers the pricing for a program they call the Platinum Marriage Retreat. And the listed base cost for this 5-day, 6-night stay is $2,600 per couple.
$2,600. And as we touched on at the start, that base cost only covers the lodging.
It's just the room.
The organization explicitly requires participants to procure and bring their own course materials and get their own food for the entire week.
Which is just mind-blowing.
It really is. I mean, it's the equivalent of being invited to an exclusive high society charity gala, right?
That's a good comparison.
Yeah. Getting charged thousands of dollars at the door, and then being handed a map to the nearest grocery store and told to fetch your own folding chair and microwave dinner, it makes absolutely no sense.
None at all.
So I have to ask you, how does an organization justify these luxury tier, high-friction commercial prices while hiding behind a tax-exempt charitable status?
Well, what's fascinating here is the specialized application of linguistics and psychology to, bridge that logical gap.
Linguistics.
Yeah. The investigative guide points out that when the financial equation fails, a predatory organization has to rely on linguistic manipulation.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because if they just presented the raw deal like, hey, pay us $3,000 to sleep in a room and feed yourself, the consumer's logical defenses would immediately block the transaction, right?
Oh, immediately. You just close the browser tab.
Exactly. So to bypass those defenses, the investigator identifies this specific setup as a religious-based honey hole.
A religious-based honey hole. That phrase from the dossier is so intense.
It really paints a picture.
It does. It implies they're intentionally using faith as bait, basically, to trap a specific type of vulnerable person.
Yes, exactly.
The whole environment is engineered so that victims and predators intentionally coexist, but the entire transaction is masked by this spiritual framing.
And the mechanics of it are incredibly calculated. I mean, look at the specific language the investigator highlights from their marketing materials.
Right.
They advertise that the retreat will target extremely deep things in your own heart that have restricted your connection with God and your partner.
Wow.
Notice how they are mapping the commercial transaction onto the participants' deepest existential fears.
It's an intentional cognitive bypass.
Totally.
If someone genuinely feels like their marriage is collapsing or, their spiritual life is failing, they are in a state of profound vulnerability. They aren't looking for a hospitality service. They are desperate for salvation.
Yes. They're looking for a lifeline.
So by framing the $2,600 retreat as the ultimate spiritual cure, the organization essentially shuts down the math part of the consumer's brain.
That's exactly it.
The cost, the missing groceries, the extra fees for the curriculum, it all just gets coded as a necessary sacrifice for a higher purpose, rather than just being a terrible commercial deal.
The emotional weight of the language acts as a literal smokescreen for the cold data of the financial transaction. And this is why the algebraic mindset is so vital.
Because it cuts through the smoke.
Right. It requires the investigator to ruthlessly separate the marketing narrative from the structural reality. You have to weigh the legal claim of being a charity against the documented, restrictive, premium price commercial demands.
Yeah.
That imbalance is your first major illogical irregularity.
And once that financial illusion is threatened by scrutiny, the organization's instinct is to hide the evidence. I mean, when a company knows its math doesn't work, they anticipate that someone is going to start auditing their claims.
Oh, for sure. They know exactly what they're doing.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We actually get to watch this reactive evasion happen live on screen.
Yes. The investigative guide categorizes this behavior as digital volatility.
Digital volatility.
Yeah, the digital footprint of an organization reveals its true nature just as much through sudden disappearances as it does through public postings.
And we see that in the YouTube video on June 6, 2026. Eric Stewart is basically recording his desktop as he audits the Str8path's website.
He's going right through it.
Yeah, he's openly discussing that $2,600 price tag, and he attempts to click through to the internal links, the ones that detail the specific programmatic requirements and costs.
Right.
And he notes for the record that these exact pathways were active just 48 hours prior.
Just a couple of days ago.
But as he clicks them during the live recording, the pathways are dead. He is met with 404 errors. The pages have just been killed.
The dossier actually refers to this specific tactic as active digital scrubbing.
Scrubbing, wow.
Yeah, the administrators of Str8paths are clearly actively monitoring traffic, or they're reacting to inquiries, and they're working overtime to erase the specific cost-related links that expose their financial paradox.
They are trying to hide the math.
Exactly. And in forensic analysis, reactive deletion during an active investigation operates as an admission of guilt through action.
That makes total sense.
Because legitimate, transparent organizations do not panic delete their core service links overnight without any explanation.
No. It's the digital equivalent of a kid frantically shoving a terrible report card under the mattress the second they hear their parents' footsteps in the hallway.
That's a great way to put it.
If a genuine nonprofit needs to adjust its pricing or update its curriculum requirements, they post a maintenance banner or an update log. They don't just vaporize the infrastructure of their website.
But an OSINT investigator doesn't just hit a dead end at a 404 error and pack it up.
Right. What do they do?
Well, the dossier outlines the necessary escalation to what it calls the master ledger. It's basically moving to a phase 2 target. When the front-end visual interface, like the polished website that the public interacts with, is being actively scrubbed, the investigator pivots. They go for direct source code extraction.
Oh, because deleting a hyperlink on a web page doesn't necessarily delete the architectural history of the site itself. The investigator is looking for those structural remnants.
Exactly. The mechanics of a website dictate that disjointed attempts to alter a narrative almost always leave residue.
Like digital breadcrumbs.
Yeah. When an administrator scrubs a page, they might just sever the front-end pathway, but the actual text, the metadata, the image files, or even developer comments, they often remain hosted on the server as orphaned files.
That is fascinating.
So by extracting and interrogating the native code, an investigator bypasses the public-facing scrub completely. They can parse the cached remnants or identify recently modified HTML tags that directly contradict the organization's sanitized narrative.
Which perfectly illustrates the pro tip highlighted in the investigative guide regarding forensic archiving, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The guide treats the internet not as some permanent library, but as this incredibly fragile, highly manipulatable environment.
Taking a forensic archive is basically like pouring a plaster cast of a footprint in the mud.
Okay, I like that.
If you wait until it rains tomorrow, the evidence is entirely washed away. You have to pour the plaster the second you spot the anomaly.
Right.
The rule of thumb in the guide is absolute. If a crucial link is active today, you must assume the target is killing it tomorrow. You archive the source code immediately upon discovery.
That is such a crucial takeaway. And, the active scrubbing isn't their only method of digital obfuscation either. The evasion is literally baked into their digital identity.
Oh, the domains, yes.
Yeah. The organization's public brand is Str8paths, spelled correctly Straight. Yet the dossier flags this massive domain-level irregularity.
So suspicious.
Their actual web domain and primary contact email are registered as straightpath.com, spelled Straightpass.
Yeah.
And they also utilize another fractured variation, Straightpass.com.
You really have to analyze that through the lens of intentional friction. I mean, it complicates standard verification for the average consumer.
How so?
Well, automated scrapers, regulatory databases, and casual researchers, they all rely on exact string matches. So by operating under a misspelled domain, they introduce this layer of digital static.
It makes them harder to find.
Exactly. It makes it marginally harder for a victim to track down their history or find associated complaints or even report them to a regulatory body.
Wow. And if the digital obfuscation is this sophisticated, it naturally makes you wonder if they operate differently in the physical world, right?
Oh, for sure.
Do they have a tangible, centralized headquarters that grounds this operation? Or does the evasion continue off-screen?
Well, the physical footprint detailed in the dossier is just as intentionally fragmented as the digital one. The geographic data reveals what they call an obscurity pattern.
Let's map out these coordinates because it really paints a very specific picture. Their primary mailing address routes to P.O. Box 172 in Ronks, Pennsylvania.
Right.
However, their listed physical office is at 2620 Old Pike in Bird in Hand, Pennsylvania.
And both Ronks and Bird in Hand are rural, highly insular communities.
Here's rural.
By fracturing their operations across different rural jurisdictions, like separating the intake of mail from the physical office space, they degrade physical accountability.
That makes a lot of sense.
Because a legitimate, transparent 501c3 really benefits from a centralized, verifiable headquarters. When an organization's physical anchors are spread across disjointed P.O. boxes, it is a structural mechanism designed to keep outsiders at arm's length.
And they reinforce that distance with their telecommunications, too.
Oh, the phone number.
Yeah. The video highlights their listed contact phone number, 717-584-00. It's an 8-digit phone number.
Which is impossible.
Right. It is structurally invalid. It physically cannot receive calls.
The dossier classifies this as a partial phone vector. It completely severs the ability for real-time verbal accountability.
So what does this all mean? I have to push back here for a moment just to, apply Hanlon's razor.
Okay, let's hear it.
We know they are using a misspelled domain name, and now we have a phone number missing its final digits. Could the 8-digit phone number just be a sloppy typo from an incompetent webmaster rather than a deliberate, malicious dead end? I mean, couldn't someone have just forgotten to hit the last 2 keys?
That's a fair point. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at the statistical probability of these errors happening in a vacuum versus happening in sequence. In isolation, yeah, a missing digit is a typo. A misspelled URL is just a clerical error. But the algebraic mindset literally forbids looking at data points in isolation. An investigator must synthesize the entire matrix of inconsistency patterns.
So you are basically measuring the aggregate weight of the friction.
Precisely. Think about it. We have the financial paradox luxury tier commercial demands contradicting a nonprofit designation.
Right.
Then we have digital deletion, the reactive scrubbing of URLs, and the deployment of mismatched domain names to create search friction.
Yeah, the 404 errors.
And finally, we have geographic disjointedness. These fragmented rural P.O. boxes paired with invalid telecommunications data. When you map all those variables together, the probability of simple incompetence drops to near zero.
It reveals a deliberate architecture of obscurity.
Yes.
I mean, if you are demanding $2,600 from a couple for a retreat, you possess the resources to maintain a functional 10-digit phone number and a unified physical address. The active choice not to do so points directly back to the investigator's core thesis. This entire apparatus is designed to keep participants isolated inside that honey hole.
Which brings us right back to the psychological manipulation we discussed earlier. The investigator's linguistic vector analysis points out a profound contradiction in their marketing promises.
Right, the language they use.
Yeah. The organization claims they will give couples the tools to break reoccurring cycles in our marriage.
Break reoccurring cycles. But the reality of their structure suggests they have absolutely no intention of actually breaking those cycles or liberating those individuals.
None. The language of liberation is basically being weaponized to reinforce captivity.
That is so dark.
It really is. As the investigator notes in his breakdown, there are times when there are highly valid, necessary reasons a marriage potentially should be broken up.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in environments of abuse or deep toxicity.
Right. But the organization doesn't want to empower individuals to recognize when it's time to leave a toxic situation. They want to fix the cycle just enough to keep the participants tethered to the ecosystem.
They need the couples to stay together, stay inside the religious framework, and most importantly, continue paying those base costs and purchasing those external curriculum materials.
Yep, the revenue stream.
The promise of breaking cycles is just another emotional hook designed to distract from the reality of the structural trap.
And this is the ultimate value of the forensic discipline we're exploring today. Identifying these disjointed data patterns exposes the underlying mechanics of deceit. It trains you to look past the heavy emotional language and focus solely on the structural reality.
So how do you operationalize this in your own life? Rather than just, giving you a list of things to memorize, let's look at how you apply the researcher's verification checklist from the guide to your daily digital interactions.
This is the practical part.
Exactly. When you encounter an organization asking for your money or your trust, your first move is to audit the alignment. Does their tax status match their pricing? If they claim to be a public charity, but their barrier to entry looks like a luxury country club, the equation is broken.
Next, you test the friction of their identity.
Right.
Does the brand name perfectly match the URL and the contact email?
Uh-huh.
If you see fragmented spellings or slight variations, recognize that as a potential tactic to evade automated scrutiny.
Like Str8path.com.
Exactly. Then verify the physical and communicative tethers. A valid operation actually wants to be found. If their addresses are scattered across rural P.O. boxes and their phone numbers are structurally incomplete, they are manufacturing distance.
And perhaps most importantly, you have to practice forensic archiving. If you are researching a group and you find a document or a price list that feels off, do not assume it will be there tomorrow.
Never assume that.
Take the screenshot. Save the page source. Because if you start asking questions and you witness active digital scrubbing, if those links suddenly return 404 errors, you aren't just seeing a website update, you are watching an admission of guilt in real time.
The overarching lesson here is that being truly well-informed requires a deliberate shift in perspective. You have to train yourself to ignore the polished graphics and the lofty, emotionally charged promises.
You have to.
You apply that algebraic mindset to the underlying architecture, quantifying the friction between what an entity claims to be and what its documented behavior actually proves.
It's about testing the foundation before you buy the house. Because as the Str8path's investigation proves, a foundation built on emotional manipulation will immediately crumble into dead links and invalid phone numbers the second you put weight on it.
It demands active, critical observation of the digital world.
It really does. And that brings us to a final thought we want to leave you with.
A provocative one.
Yeah. We discussed how Stewart, the investigator, was moving to phase 2 of his master ledger plan, extracting the native source code to bypass the active scrubbing. He's going into the architecture to hunt for the ghosts of deleted data, the cached remnants of what the administrators tried to hide. It raises a fascinating and honestly slightly haunting question for all of us.
It really forces you to look in the mirror.
Exactly. If a meticulous specialist were to turn that ruthless algebraic mindset toward you, what would they find? What hidden digital breadcrumbs, orphan files, and disjointed inconsistencies exist in your own online footprint, just waiting to be uncovered by someone who knows how to look behind the code?
That is definitely something to think about.
We'll leave you to ponder that.